Hey guys, Reference Into Gaming. Today I'm gonna just jump in and give you guys a little overview on how footsteps and other sounds are generated and set up in multiplayer games. Um, and for the most part of this, it's due to seeing a lot of posts in the PuBG Reddit and in the old forums back in the day about footsteps not playing and so forth. So I'm going to give some insight into how they're done, um, which will help you guys troubleshoot what the potential problem might be. And 99% of the time, this is not a code thing, a bad code thing, and it's definitely not a server thing. So, with that, give you an overview of how they're done. Um, we're going to do this overview in the actual training map in PUBG first, and then I'm going to jump into the engine and give you a little bit more detail on this, um, so you know exactly what's going on here. So with footsteps, the base principle here is with characters you have a capsule component, and a capsule component is a collision hull that's in the shape of a pill, like a capsule pill. Um, and that's what you're moving when you do WASD. You're in jump and sprint and all that, and forward movement, backward, whatever. Any of your movement inputs, you're controlling that capsule's position in the world. So you're moving it. The character mesh, which is a skeletal mesh, which means it has a skeleton rig of bones, um, that's attached to that capsule. So wherever that capsule goes, the skeletal mesh goes. And based on your movement type, your states, we play a specific animation within the state machine. So if I press forward and I'm in a walking movement mode, we're going to play a very specific movement animation within the state machine. Um, so that's how you get your movement. Now with footstep sounds, we take the animation itself, and within its sequence, it's a timeline of different frames. Pretty much like a video. You can think of it as like a segment of video in Premiere. You have frames, or keyframes, and each keyframe, we're moving the bones of the skeleton, lerping them, and the engine is saying, okay, well, move the mesh with it, and so forth. So that's how we get animation. Um, and so forth. So within that sequence, we apply a basically a special key within the sequence when the foot plants in that animation. So when the foot comes down and plants, and I'll show you this in the engine, when the foot comes down and plants, we have a notify event there, and that event basically gets triggered. So when animation plays and the key reader hits that point in the animation, it fires off that footstep event. That footstep event goes through and it does all the logic to play the sound. Um, so the logic aspect of it is it basically at the pelvis or hip area, center mass of the skeletal mesh, it fires a line trace, a raycast, directly down to the ground to find out what's below you. What am I walking on? And it determines what surface type you're hitting or you're stepping on, and that gives us a physical material. The physical material is then has a specific sound file, a wave file attached to it, or PCM and so forth, attached. So if I'm walking on this dirt, I get that dirt sound every time my foot plants. Boom, 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 boom. When I step over into the concrete area, I get the concrete sound, and that's how we change sounds dynamically. But it's all controlled by the client. Every sound that you hear in the game of other opponents is determined by your client, not by the server, not by the other client that's John Doe running on his game, his client. It's not determined by that. It's where that simulated proxy of John Doe is in your game world. So everybody has their own simulation of the game world, and where we are in a given point in time may vary based on latency, but all sounds are client-side deterministic, to put it in perspective. My client determines whether or not your footstep plays a sound and what sound it plays. Does it play a dirt sound? Does it play concrete? Whatever. Um, so that, in a nutshell, is footsteps. Um, so there's no data being transferred from the server. The server's not sending you a packet say, play this sound, play this sound, play this sound. If it did, that would be a lot of data being sent to you for no purpose, really. I mean, it would be non-performant, non-network performant, because you're just eating up a lot of uh, networks. You're saturating the network basically with all those packets, and once the network gets saturated, important data can't get to you. Like, you try to open a door, which is all server-side control, the door's not going to open because you can't send a packet because the network is saturated, and so forth. You can't fire your gun because the network is saturated. You can't uh, really do anything other than move when the network is saturated, and you'll get corrected once it's unsaturated. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump out of this and jump into the engine. Okay, so here we have base character and this little pink guy right here. That's the capsule component that I was talking about that we move. And then we have the skeletal mesh that just rides along with that capsule. You can see up here in the outliner here that the capsule component is the parent. It's the parent actor. Everything is attached to it. And then we have the mesh. And we have foot sound audio component, so we play foot sounds out through a component directly attached to that capsule at a specific point in it, just above the surface of the ground. And then if I back out of here, you can see, if I can get far enough out, you can see that it has an attenuation applied to it. And I have right here, this class over here, attenuation settings for the footsteps. How far out can they be heard, and what volume. So when we get out to way out to this point on the edge, the volume of the footsteps should be dissipated off to where you can barely hear it or hear it at all. But in general, that's just a base setup. And then you have the animation class, which you can see the skeleton in here. But here's the anim notify footstep. So when that's triggered, we're going to basically check is the movement mode, which is part of the character movement system, what mode we're in. If we're in walking or nav mesh walking, nav mesh is usually for AI, this is going to be true, and we fire off a footstep audio event. And footstep audio is where we get into stuff like this. We don't run this code on the server. It's just local client only. It's only for simulated proxies and autonomous proxies, not authority, which is always server. And then we go through, and here's that line trace. We're going to get the target mesh. We're going to go from the pelvis. We're going to shoot down 150 centimeters, which is 1.5 meters, find out what's below the character, and then we take that hit result, which spits out everything. I'll break that for you real quick so you can see what all's in that. So this is what gets returned. We get bone names if we hit a skeletal mesh, impact points, normals, impact normal, physical material, and then surface types. And then we define the surface type, we parse the surface type, and that will pull back our sound base. And we have a footstep surface map that maps out everything, and we can see that over here. Character footstep system. If I hit grass, I'm going to play this. If I hit dirt, I'm going to play this. If I hit wood, I'm going to play this. And these are, let me just open up this. This is a way to actually get into this. So we're defining certain values for it, and we're going to play that wave. And this is in Unreal Engine 5.1 right now. I think I'm running 5.1 on this. This is Meta Sound Source. It gets rid of the old stuff. The PuBG doesn't have this. This is the upgraded sound system in the new setup. So in general, that's what's going on. Let me get back over here. Let me actually open up one of the animations. Let me get the anim graph open. default machine, and then we're going to jump into the idle run, and then we're going to open up this. So, and let me see which one are we doing here. So, this is a blend space right here where we can blend between multiple animations. So we have our idle animation here. That's the idle animation, and then we move into a walk animation, and then we go to a run animation. And it's all determined on the speed of that capsule component. How fast is that capsule component moving in the game space, game world. So that's how that is. But I'm going to open up, let's open up third person run so you can see what I mean by that. We have some orientations. Now we have, let me pause this real quick. Now we have, this is the animation for running. This is the third person run, and you can see the skeleton there. Let me back this out a little bit. And you can see these little notifies. These are the notifies. We have a footstep plant at this point in time and at this point in time. And I'm just going to manually run this back and get down a little bit. Let me page down a little. So when the foot hits a certain point in this animation, the scaling's off on this. Anyway, the scaling's off. Let me adjust that. I don't know how that happened, but we're going to take this guy and we're going to put him right here. So when the foot plants right there, let's get a good plant. It's planted. We're going to apply the sound. And then on this one, move the little key. And when it gets over here, take this guy and move him out. When it plants right about there, we're going to take this one. And we're going to scale this out. So, when I play it, boom, every time it hits one of those, boom, 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 boom. Every time it hits that event, it's going to fire off. And what that does in game is it calls that logic. Every time my footsteps hit the ground, and you can see I hit dirt. And that, in a nutshell, is how footsteps are done. So it's all client-side deterministic, and it's based off the animation. Now, what can happen is with server correction, the other player gets warped. So if a player has a bad ping or packet loss and his movements aren't getting to the server fast enough, the server might have to correct where that player is, and then it'll send you an update, and that player gets warped to a new position. And when you warp a player, so basically you're teleporting them, you're not running an animation. So you're not going to get that walking or running animation to play, thus you're not going to get the footstep to play. And that can happen a lot in multiplayer games where you have opponents with 300 ping. It's not so common with pings under 150. It does happen. The higher your ping, the more packet loss you're going to have. So packet loss, and you're going to get jitter too, which can have some effect on corrections, the server doing the corrections. But if you want more information on that, just let me know. But in general, that's how footsteps are handled. The client is running it, not the server. The server's not sending you packets saying, hey, play a sound, play a sound. Your client's doing that all in its own. It's all deterministic. So if the character is moving in your world, your client, your game client on your PC is determining what sound and when to play it and how to play it and whether or not it can play it. We have concurrency settings. Concurrency determines how all the different footsteps in the group are handled and so forth. The priority of the sound. If there's a sound effect that needs to be played, it has a very high priority, it'll override the slot. like I said, you can only play a certain amount of sounds. With PUBG, it might be 128 for PC and 64 for console. It might be 64 for PC and 32 for console. And what we can do is go into edit and project settings, and then look at audio, and then let's see, where's max channels. Max channels. Yeah, see right here, quality levels, audio settings, max channels. There's 32 for this particular setup. You define it, but the default, I believe, in the engine is 32. I can define it to 64, and what that means, at any frame in your game, you can have a maximum of 64 sounds playing. So if you try to do 65, 66, based on concurrency rules and priority, they might play, they might not play. So um, with that, I think we got everything covered here. So if there's any questions, just let me know. I know it's a lengthy video, but just ask, and I'll go through it in a little bit more detail. Thanks for watching.